There is a distinction so profound, yet so overlooked in our age, that it determines whether a mind truly serves humanity or merely serves itself. In my decades forming scholars at the École Pratique de Hautes Études, I have witnessed countless students who possessed impressive credentials yet lacked the essential mark of authentic intellectual life. They were educated, certainly, but were they intellectuals? This question haunts our universities and should disturb every serious seeker of truth. The difference between being educated and being a true intellectual is not merely academic, it is the difference between possessing information and being possessed by wisdom, between knowing facts and living in communion with truth itself. Today, I offer you 7 unmistakable signs that reveal whether you have crossed this sacred threshold. These are not arbitrary standards but eternal principles drawn from the contemplative tradition that has formed great minds for centuries. Ask yourself honestly as we proceed, do you merely consume knowledge, or has knowledge begun to transform you? The answer will determine not only your intellectual destiny but your capacity to serve the highest good. Let us begin this examination of conscience together. Chapter 1, The Test of Humility. Do you know that you don't know? The first and most revealing test of authentic intellectual life is your relationship with ignorance. The educated person accumulates facts like a merchant accumulates goods, proudly counting their possessions, displaying them for admiration, measuring their worth by quantity rather than quality. But the true intellectual discovers, with each genuine insight, vast territories of unknown truth stretching beyond their grasp like an endless horizon that recedes the closer they approach. When Socrates proclaimed his wisdom consisted in knowing that he knew nothing, he revealed the fundamental disposition of every serious mind. This is not false modesty but intellectual honesty born from real encounter with truth's infinite depths. The educated person finishes their doctorate and feels they have conquered their field, like an explorer who mistakes mapping one valley for understanding an entire continent. The intellectual finishes their doctorate and realizes they have barely begun to understand the mystery they study, each answer revealing 10 new questions, each certainty illuminating greater uncertainties. I have observed this phenomenon countless times in my years of formation. Students arrive at their studies confident in their grasp of Thomistic principles, armed with textbook definitions and systematic outlines. But after years of genuine contemplation, they discover that each theological concept they thought they understood opens into mysteries that require lifetimes to fathom. This is not failure, it is the natural expansion of mind meeting reality's inexhaustible richness. The educated person fears admitting ignorance because it threatens their professional status, their carefully constructed identity as an expert. They develop elaborate strategies for concealing gaps in their knowledge, speaking confidently about subjects they barely understand. The intellectual embraces ignorance as the doorway to deeper understanding. They say, "I don't know," not with embarrassment but with excitement, recognizing each admission as an invitation to further exploration, a gift of intellectual freedom. This humility manifests practically in how you approach learning. Do you read to confirm what you already believe, seeking only evidence that supports your existing positions? Or do you read hoping to be challenged and changed, welcoming authors who disturb your comfortable assumptions? Do you engage with opposing viewpoints merely to defeat them intellectually, or to understand truth more completely through dialogue? Do you measure your progress by how much you know, or by how much you realize remains to be known? The humble intellectual also recognizes that wisdom often comes from unexpected sources. They listen attentively to students, knowing that fresh minds often see what experienced ones have overlooked. They learn from craftsmen, contemplatives, even children, understanding that truth can speak through anyone who encounters reality honestly. Pride closes the mind like a fortress. Humility keeps it perpetually open to instruction from any quarter. Chapter 2, The Test of Purpose. Do you seek truth or merely success? The second test reveals itself in your deepest motivations, in the hidden springs that drive your intellectual activity. Why do you study? Why do you seek knowledge? For what ultimate end do you direct your mental energies? The educated person learns for advancement, recognition, or personal advantage. Their scholarship serves their ambition. The intellectual learns because truth itself calls to them with irresistible attraction. Their ambition serves scholarship. This distinction shapes everything about how learning proceeds. The educated person asks, how will this knowledge benefit me? Will it advance my career, enhance my reputation, increase my influence, or provide material advantage? The intellectual asks, how will this knowledge benefit truth and, through truth, humanity? What does reality require me to understand? How can my learning serve the common good? One orientation is fundamentally self-serving, the other is fundamentally self-transcending. I have witnessed brilliant minds waste their extraordinary gifts pursuing academic glory rather than genuine understanding. They choose research topics based on career prospects rather than intellectual necessity, selecting problems that will generate publications rather than those that demand resolution. They study emerging trends rather than perennial questions, fashionable theories rather than fundamental principles. Their education becomes an elaborate form of sophisticated selfishness, using the noble pursuit of knowledge as a vehicle for base ambitions. The authentic intellectual experiences learning as a sacred vocation, a calling that transcends personal interests. They feel profound responsibility to truth itself, not just to their department, their institution, or their profession, but to reality as such. This creates what I call intellectual chastity, the discipline of pursuing knowledge for its own sake rather than for what it can accomplish for us personally. This purity of intention transforms the entire learning process. When you study primarily for truth's sake, you develop patience with difficult questions that may take years to resolve. You acquire perseverance through intellectual obstacles that offer no immediate rewards. You cultivate courage to follow evidence wherever it leads, even when it challenges your cherished beliefs, threatens your theoretical commitments, or endangers your professional position. The truth-seeking intellectual also serves others naturally and generously. Because they genuinely care about understanding reality accurately, they genuinely care about sharing that understanding with anyone who can benefit. Their teaching flows from love of truth rather than love of being seen as knowledgeable. Their writing seeks to clarify complex realities rather than to impress readers with their erudition. Their conversations aim to advance mutual understanding rather than to demonstrate superiority. Consider your own motivations with rigorous honesty. When you encounter a challenging book or grapple with a complex problem, what fundamentally drives your engagement? Are you hoping to master it for your own intellectual elevation, or are you hoping to understand it for truth's sake? Do you study ultimately to become someone important in your field, or to serve something important that transcends your field? Chapter 3, The Test of Integration. Do you live what you learn? The third test examines the unity between your intellectual life and your personal existence, between what you know and how you live. The educated person compartmentalizes knowledge, treating it as external information to be stored in mental filing cabinets and retrieved when professionally necessary. Learning remains separate from living, theory disconnected from practice. The intellectual integrates knowledge organically, allowing it to transform their entire being like water penetrating soil. This integration manifests in profound and unmistakable ways. The true intellectual cannot study ethics without becoming more ethical in their daily choices and relationships. They cannot contemplate beauty without becoming more beautiful in soul, developing refined sensibilities and elevated tastes. They cannot pursue truth without becoming more truthful in all their dealings, more honest, more authentic, more transparent. Learning changes them at the deepest level because they approach knowledge not as external acquisition but as internal transformation. I have known scholars who could lecture brilliantly on virtue while living vicious lives, who could analyze the greatest literature while remaining completely untouched by its wisdom, Who could teach profound theology while practicing spiritual negligence? Their vast education remained perpetually on the surface, like oil floating on water, never penetrating to the core of their being. They had accumulated impressive knowledge without allowing that knowledge to form their character. The authentic intellectual experience is a radically different reality. Each genuine insight creates what the scholastic tradition calls a habitus, a stable disposition that influences all subsequent thinking and acting. They cannot learn about justice without becoming more just in their judgments and actions. They cannot study contemplation without becoming more contemplative in their approach to reality. They cannot understand compassion intellectually without becoming more compassionate practically. This integration requires what I call intellectual asceticism, the disciplined effort to live according to what you know to be true. It means aligning your daily choices with your deepest convictions, allowing your learning to shape your character as fundamentally as it shapes your thinking. The intellectual who studies temperance practices temperance. The one who understands courage acts courageously. The one who grasps the nature of love becomes more loving. Consider honestly how your studies have changed you as a person. Has your philosophical understanding influenced your practical decisions about how to live? Has your theological knowledge genuinely deepened your spiritual life and prayer? Has your scientific learning increased your wonder at creation's intricate mysteries? If your learning leaves you fundamentally unchanged as a human being, it remains merely external education rather than authentic intellectual formation. The integrated intellectual also demonstrates remarkable coherence between their various fields of study. They perceive connections where others see only separate compartments. Their knowledge becomes organic and unified, with each discipline illuminating others in a magnificent symphony of understanding. History informs their philosophy, philosophy enriches their theology, theology deepens their appreciation of beauty, beauty enhances their scientific wonder. This unity extends naturally to their relationships with other people. The truly formed intellectual treats every person as a potential teacher, recognizing that each individual embodies unique insights into reality. They approach every conversation as a potential source of understanding, every disagreement as an opportunity to see truth from new angles. Their entire life becomes a continuous education because they have learned to live contemplatively, extracting wisdom from every experience. Chapter 4: The Test of Contemplation. Do you reflect or just react? The fourth test concerns your relationship with intellectual depth, your capacity for sustained contemplative engagement with reality. The educated person processes information rapidly and efficiently, moving quickly from one item to the next like a high-speed scanner. They pride themselves on covering vast amounts of material, consuming books and articles at impressive rates. The intellectual cultivates the entirely different art of contemplative lingering, allowing truth to penetrate slowly and completely like morning light gradually illuminating a landscape. This contemplative quality fundamentally distinguishes superficial learning from profound understanding. The educated person reads many books quickly, checking items off academic lists, accumulating bibliographic credentials. The intellectual reads fewer books slowly and repeatedly, returning to great works again and again, mining each for all its treasures like a careful geologist extracting precious metals from ore. They understand that rushed reading inevitably produces rushed thinking, while patient contemplation yields lasting wisdom. I have always taught my students that genuine learning requires what the monastic tradition calls lectio divina, a slow, meditative approach to texts that seeks not merely information but transformation. This contemplative reading creates mental space for insights that hurried consumption simply cannot provide. Ideas need time to germinate, connections require space to form, wisdom demands silence to emerge. The contemplative intellectual also practices what I call intellectual Sabbath, regular periods of sustained reflection that allow accumulated learning to settle and integrate naturally. They understand that constant input without contemplative processing produces mental indigestion rather than genuine intellectual nourishment. Just as the body requires time to digest food properly, the mind requires time to assimilate knowledge fully. This contemplative approach applies equally to conversation and direct experience. The intellectual listens contemplatively, allowing others' words to resonate fully before responding, hearing not just the surface meaning but the deeper intentions and implications. They experience events contemplatively, extracting meaning and significance rather than simply accumulating memories. They think contemplatively, following ideas patiently to their deepest implications rather than skimming across intellectual surfaces. Contemplation also means learning to dwell productively with mystery rather than rushing toward premature conclusions. The educated person becomes frustrated by unanswered questions, impatient with problems that resist quick solution. The intellectual learns to live fruitfully with profound questions that may take years or even lifetimes to resolve fully. They develop what Keats beautifully called negative capability, the rare ability to remain in uncertainty and doubt without irritably reaching after fact and reason. This contemplative approach requires actively defending silence in our age of constant noise, protecting depth in our era of systematic distraction, and preserving reflection in our culture of immediate reaction. The true intellectual deliberately creates both physical and mental spaces for contemplation, understanding that without such protected spaces, even the best education remains sterile and superficial. The contemplative intellectual also recognizes that some truths can only be grasped through prolonged meditation. Certain insights emerge only after extended reflection, like stars that become visible only when the eye adjusts to darkness. They understand that intellectual life includes not just active study but also passive receptivity, not just aggressive questioning but also patient waiting for understanding to dawn. Examine your own learning patterns with complete honesty. Do you read contemplatively or merely consumptively? Do you think reflectively or simply reactively? Do you engage with important ideas long enough for them to genuinely change you, or do you move too quickly to the next intellectual stimulation? The contemplative quality ultimately determines whether your learning becomes integrated wisdom or remains scattered information. Chapter 5: The Test of Service. Do you hoard knowledge or share wisdom? The fifth test reveals itself in your relationship with others and your fundamental sense of intellectual responsibility. The educated person hoards knowledge like a miser hoards gold, using learning primarily for personal advancement and competitive advantage. They treat their expertise as private property, sharing it only when professionally required or personally beneficial. The intellectual understands that authentic knowledge creates a profound moral obligation to serve truth and humanity through generous sharing of understanding. This service orientation flows naturally and inevitably from genuine encounter with truth. When you truly understand something important, when you grasp a principle that illuminates reality or discover an insight that resolves confusion, you feel compelled to share that understanding with others. Not to display your intelligence or enhance your reputation, but because truth itself demands to be communicated. The intellectual experiences what I call generous knowledge, learning that naturally expands beyond the individual to benefit the common good. I have observed throughout my years of teaching that those who possess authentic intellectual life naturally become educators, whether formally in academic institutions or informally through writing, conversation, and example. They cannot help but share their insights because they understand intuitively that knowledge reaches its full realization only when it serves others. Their learning becomes a genuine form of love, love of truth expressing itself concretely in love of neighbor. This service manifests in multiple practical ways. The intellectual writes clearly rather than obscurely, preferring to illuminate complex realities rather than to intimidate readers with incomprehensible jargon. They teach with patience and empathy, always remembering their own struggles with difficult concepts. They mentor younger scholars generously, sharing not just technical information but hard-won wisdom about the intellectual life itself. The service-oriented intellectual also accepts responsibility for truth's practical application to contemporary problems. They cannot remain comfortably in ivory towers while the world struggles with questions their learning might help resolve. They feel genuinely obligated to bring their contemplative insights to bear on urgent practical challenges, whether in education, politics, social justice, or spiritual formation. This creates what I call intellectual apostolate, the sacred mission of spreading understanding wherever it is desperately needed. The authentic intellectual serves actively in classrooms, through writing, in conversation, and by personal example. They understand clearly that their intellectual gifts are not their private property but talents entrusted to them for the benefit of all humanity. The service test also reveals itself in intellectual generosity toward colleagues and students. The educated person often guards their ideas jealously, fearing that sharing insights will diminish their competitive advantage. The intellectual shares insights freely and abundantly, knowing that truth multiplies when shared rather than diminishing. They celebrate others' intellectual achievements rather than envying them. Consider your own approach to knowledge with rigorous self-examination. Do you share insights freely and generously, or do you guard them jealously for personal advantage? Do you teach others with genuine enthusiasm, or do you compete with them suspiciously? Do you actively seek ways to use your learning in service of higher purposes, or do you employ it primarily for self-advancement? Do you feel authentic responsibility for truth's welfare in our troubled world? The service test also necessarily includes what I call intellectual courage, the moral willingness to speak truth even when it proves unpopular, inconvenient, or personally costly. The educated person often remains prudently silent to protect their institutional position or social standing. The intellectual speaks boldly when truth requires it, regardless of personal consequences or professional risks. This service orientation ultimately distinguishes between intellectual workers and intellectual servants. Workers use knowledge primarily to serve themselves through enhanced status, income, or influence. Servants use themselves primarily to serve knowledge through dedicated pursuit and generous sharing of truth. The difference determines whether your intellectual life contributes to human flourishing or merely to personal advancement. Chapter 6. The Test of Wonder. Do you still experience intellectual awe? The sixth test examines your fundamental capacity for intellectual wonder, that profound amazement before reality's mystery that Aristotle correctly identified as the beginning of all genuine philosophy. The educated person gradually loses this essential wonder, becoming increasingly jaded by professional familiarity with their chosen field. They develop what I call expertise fatigue, the dangerous illusion that understanding mechanisms eliminates mystery. The intellectual cultivates and deliberately protects this wonder as the inexhaustible source of all authentic learning. Wonder is not mere sentimentality or intellectual immaturity but the deepest form of intellectual honesty before the ultimate mystery of existence itself. When you truly understand how little anyone actually understands about consciousness, about quantum mechanics, about the nature of beauty, about the reality of love, about the mystery of being itself, you cannot help but experience profound and lasting amazement. The educated person's professional confidence often masks a tragic loss of this foundational wonder. I have noticed repeatedly that the most intellectually advanced students, those who have penetrated deepest into their fields, often rediscover childlike amazement at reality's inexhaustible complexity and beauty. They develop what I call learned wonder, amazement that actually increases rather than decreases with accumulated knowledge. Each answer they discover reveals deeper questions, each certainty illuminates greater mysteries, each solution opens new problems. This wonder manifests practically in intellectual humility before any genuinely important question. The truly learned person approaches even familiar topics with fresh curiosity, knowing that reality always exceeds our current grasp of it. They read ancient texts as if encountering them for the first time, discovering new meanings in passages they thought they understood completely. They engage with contemporary problems as genuine mysteries rather than mere technical challenges. Wonder also creates intellectual patience, the rare capacity to find joy in the process of discovery itself rather than only in the accumulation of final results. The amazed mind does not rush impatiently toward conclusions but savors each step of the journey toward understanding. This patience allows for much deeper penetration into truth than hasty efficiency can ever achieve. The wonderful intellectual also maintains what I call cosmic perspective, constant awareness that their particular field of study participates in the grand mystery of existence itself. The mathematician sees numbers as glimpses into reality's fundamental order rather than mere abstract symbols. The historian sees events as chapters in humanity's magnificent drama rather than random occurrences. The theologian sees doctrines as windows into infinite mystery rather than final definitions. This wonder extends naturally to other people as well. The intellectual sees each person as a unique embodiment of consciousness, each conversation as a potential revelation, each disagreement as an opportunity to understand truth more completely. They approach others with the same fundamental amazement they bring to their formal studies. Wonder also preserves intellectual humility in the face of reality's ultimate mysteries. The wondering mind recognizes that some questions transcend human comprehension entirely. They accept mystery not as intellectual failure but as encounter with reality's infinite depth. This prevents the intellectual pride that mistakes limited understanding for complete knowledge. Examine your own intellectual experience with complete honesty. Do you still feel genuine amazement by what you study, or has professional familiarity bred emotional indifference? Do you approach your field with fresh curiosity each day, or with tired routine? Do you see your subject matter as inexhaustible mystery to be explored, or as conquered territory to be administered? The preservation of wonder requires deliberate cultivation in our age of intellectual cynicism and professional specialization. It means protecting childlike curiosity while developing adult competence, maintaining amateur enthusiasm while acquiring expert knowledge. Chapter 7, The Test of Love. Do you love truth more than being right? The seventh and final test penetrates to the absolute deepest level of intellectual authenticity, your fundamental relationship with truth itself. The educated person loves being right, loves the feeling of intellectual superiority, loves winning arguments and demonstrating competence. The intellectual loves truth itself, even when it proves them wrong, even when it humbles their pride, even when it costs them professional advantage. This crucial distinction determines whether your learning ultimately serves truth or serves your ego. This authentic love of truth manifests most clearly in intellectual courage, the moral willingness to follow evidence wherever it leads, even when it contradicts your previous convictions, threatens your theoretical commitments, or endangers your professional reputation. I have witnessed scholars cling desperately to disproven theories rather than admit fundamental error, choosing personal consistency over objective truth. This reveals education without authentic intellectual life. The truth-loving intellectual experiences genuine joy when corrected by others, because correction means they now understand reality more accurately than before. They feel sincere gratitude toward those who point out their errors, recognizing such people as servants of truth rather than threats to their ego. Their primary attachment is to truth rather than to their own opinions about truth. This love also creates intellectual generosity toward intellectual opponents. The authentic intellectual assumes charitably that even seriously mistaken positions often contain partial insights worth understanding and incorporating. They engage with opposing viewpoints genuinely seeking to understand before seeking to refute. They recognize that truth often emerges through respectful dialogue rather than through competitive monologue. The love of truth also manifests in intellectual patience with reality's complexity. Truth reveals itself slowly and often partially, requiring sustained attention and repeated approaches. The truth-loving mind does not force premature conclusions or demand immediate answers to ultimate questions. They understand that genuine understanding requires time, contemplation, and often multiple perspectives on the same fundamental reality. This creates what I call intellectual chastity, the disciplined practice of loving truth for its own sake rather than for what it can accomplish for us personally. The chaste intellectual studies for truth's benefit rather than their own advancement. They serve truth rather than expecting truth to serve their ambitions, their theories, or their professional needs. The love of truth also includes intellectual courage in defending truth against popular error or fashionable falsehood. The truth-loving intellectual speaks honestly even when truth proves unpopular, inconvenient, or professionally costly. They understand that truth requires loyal advocates, not merely casual admirers. This love extends to embracing mystery when human understanding reaches its natural limits. The educated person becomes frustrated by unanswered questions that resist solution. The intellectual finds profound joy in mysteries that exceed current understanding. They recognize that some questions may require lifetimes to answer properly, and others may transcend human comprehension entirely. The ultimate test of this love appears in your response to truth that challenges your fundamental assumptions. Do you welcome such challenges as opportunities for growth, or do you resist them as threats to be overcome? Do you approach disagreement seeking understanding, or seeking victory? Do you change your mind when evidence demands it, or do you rationalize contrary evidence away? This love of truth also naturally includes love of truth's ultimate source. The deepest intellectual life opens inevitably toward the transcendent, recognizing that finite minds encounter infinite mystery. Whether through philosophical reflection or mystical experience, the authentic intellectual senses that all particular truths point beyond themselves toward their ultimate foundation in absolute truth. Consider your own intellectual motivations with complete honesty. Do you love truth enough to be proven wrong? Do you seek genuine understanding or mere vindication of your existing beliefs? Do you serve truth faithfully, or do you expect truth to serve your personal agenda? Do you find authentic joy in mystery and complexity, or only in solutions that enhance your sense of mastery? This final test reveals whether your intellectual life has achieved its proper ordering, truth first, self second, with all learning oriented toward participation in eternal wisdom that transcends individual understanding. Conclusion. These 7 tests reveal the sacred distinction between mere education and authentic intellectual life. They are not arbitrary academic standards but eternal principles that have guided serious minds throughout history. The educated person may successfully pass examinations and earn impressive degrees while failing these deeper tests of intellectual authenticity. The intellectual may lack formal credentials while embodying these essential qualities that mark genuine wisdom. Most importantly, these tests reveal intellectual life as a sacred vocation, not merely a professional career. The true intellectual serves truth, wonder, wisdom, and ultimately the highest good itself. Their learning becomes a form of contemplative service to reality, contributing to humanity's collective understanding of truth. If these tests reveal areas where you remain merely educated rather than truly intellectual, do not despair or become discouraged. Authentic intellectual life is not achieved once through some dramatic conversion but cultivated daily through disciplined practice and humble commitment. Begin today, read more contemplatively, think more humbly, serve more generously, wonder more deeply, love truth more than being right. The world desperately needs authentic intellectuals, minds formed not just by information but by wisdom, not just by technical competence but by intellectual virtue. Your intellectual life is not your private possession but your unique contribution to humanity's understanding of truth. Embrace this sacred responsibility with both profound humility and courageous determination.